Well, tensions have been building in the Azov Sea really since May this year when Russia inaugurated its bridge across the Kerch Strait linking Russia to Crimea, which it illegally annexed from Ukraine in 2014. Ukraine doesn't recognize that, nor does most of the international community. So, what Russia says are its territorial waters. I think it's talking about Crimean territorial waters, which, from the Ukrainian point of view, are absolutely not Russian territorial waters. In any case, the Azov Sea is supposed to be jointly under the control of both countries. Ever since May and that bridge was inaugurated, Russia has been blocking the arrival of ships, or rather stopping them and checking them, whether it's Ukrainian ships or international ships going to the Ukrainian ports of Mariupol and Berdyansk. These checks on these ships have sometimes taken up to 36 hours or even more. The cost is absolutely enormous. The economic damage to those ports and the Ukrainian economy is very large. And this has been accompanied also by an increased number of Russian military ships in the Azov Sea, which had got the Ukrainians very worried. And so I think the Ukrainians, wanting to try to improve the situation in the Azov Sea, which is pretty untenable for them from the commercial point of view and worrying from the military point of view, the Ukrainians decided to send these two naval vessels. But according to the Ukrainians' account of it, when they got there, they initially found that the space under the bridge was blocked by a big Russian ship. They saw they weren't going to be able to get through, and they decided to turn back and head back to Odessa, which is on the Black Sea, and they don't have to go through the strait to get there. But then, as they were already on their way back, the Russians started to fire on them, and this dramatic situation emerged.
Gulliver, I mean, the conflict there's been largely off the international radar, at least anyway, for a while now. I mean, do you think this could reignite the problems there?
Well, it's worth noting that Ukrainians quite often complain about the fact that it's off the international news agenda because fighting the land war is still very much ongoing. People die every week in the conflict that's going on in the Donbass, part of which has been taken over by Russian-backed separatists. But it's hard to know what will happen next exactly in the Azov Sea. Clearly, Ukraine does not want to relinquish control of the Azov Sea, but at the same time, they haven't got the naval might to really challenge the Russians. It's hard to see big, large-scale deadly sea battles happening there on the Azov Sea. I think what the Ukrainians want to do at the moment is to make as much fuss about this as possible. They've requested a debate in the UN Security Council, which is something they have the right to do under the terms of the Budapest Memorandum signed with Russia, the United Kingdom and the United States when Ukraine gave up its nuclear arsenal. And the UN Security Council has agreed to that. There will be a debate about it. So maybe there'll be a UN resolution that could help change the situation. And then there's this discussion of imposing martial law in Ukraine. Now, a lot of commentators in Ukraine are already saying that that looks like a very radical step, perhaps also designed more than anything to just attract attention to the problem. But martial law is something that you normally declare when there are problems all over the country. It's something that can allow the government to put limits on press freedom, for example. It could even allow the government to put a curfew in place. A lot of people are saying this seems like an awfully strong measure for a situation that is currently a very serious but nevertheless a completely local problem just in the Azov Sea near the Kerch Strait there. We'll see how Ukrainian MPs vote later today. One Ukrainian MP has already voiced concern that this could be a move by President Poroshenko to try to delay the presidential election, which is due in March next year.